How y'all doing? I got myself a knife here on my table. And this is from a company that I hadn't really heard of, but I guess they were kind of a Kickstarter sort of thing. But they're making their way onto retail shelves now, so I decided to pick one up. This is a knife from Ironfly. It's the only model that they have so far. There you go. And this is the Zesty, which was half of the reason why I bought the knife, because yeah, that word always amuses me. Probably has to do with a Pete Holmes stand-up comic bit about him trying to shave with Miracle Whip. And he's just like, zesty. And yeah, that was some good stuff. Yeah, this is, of course, has a micarta because, well, everything in the known universe has it now. As you can see, though, this has a lot of fit and finish problems. The micarta is actually warped, and I can get my finger in between there and the liner. It's a little bit worse on one side than it is the other. You know, obviously you're going to have that on the on the liner side there. So that part, you know, I would assume would be right. But yeah, it's a little not shaped right there, and bowed on both sides. I have taken this apart and seen if maybe it was just some temperature differences or whatnot, and tried to reseat and all that sort of stuff, and that didn't help at all. It did help the action a little bit. It was pretty good, and now it is quite nice. You know, not the dangerous fall shutty, but very, very drop shutty regardless. And we have some fairly raggy texture kind of going on the micarta. It's a little more grippy than some of the more polished stuff, so that is definitely something to keep in mind there. The blade is nicely tucked in there, so you don't really have any worries about that. And something that I do kind of like to see, but get scared, is a wire clip on a knife. I feel like Spyderco kind of started the thing with some of theirs, and they started them a long time ago, but they haven't put them on a ton. But a lot of other companies are kind of getting on there because it's a fairly cheap way to make a deep carry clip. But unfortunately, a lot of companies, this one in particular, has just too much flex that can happen on there. So it doesn't really feel super strong. So if it does catch on something, this guy's probably going to get all busted up or whatnot. I don't have the box in front of me, but they did give you another clip in the box, so they probably thought about that as well. What they didn't do, though, is give you another end bolt that you actually need to get that on there. So if that got loose and that's why you lost your clip, well, you're still SOL. So I suppose kind of keep that in mind. But it is nice that you can reverse it right and left, so that is a plus there. We got a flipper tab. It sticks out a little bit, but the knife does dip in a little bit there, so it's not quite as out there as it might otherwise be. And I do have to say the ergonomics on this thing are pretty good. They definitely had a good design sort of thing going on with this guy here. We got a little bit of a swedge kind of going on there, but yep, pretty much as near as makes no difference, a full flat grind on this guy. And it's in VG10 rather than D2 or anything like that. And that's kind of where I'm a little concerned in general. Obviously, this is a new knife manufacturer. Kind of. I guess some of their people had worked on some other OEMs in the past or something like that. But because of that, it's kind of a small batch thing, so they're more expensive than they would otherwise be if they were hugely mass marketed or anything like that. This guy is about $58, and for me, I think they put all of that into hoping that people were really excited about VG10. Because the fit and finish and the everything else on it was just underwhelming at best. And something that I can do with, I'm going to take a look at this right afterwards here, is this is a Gonzo that just came out. I mean, this one's in G10 because they don't really mess around with micarta that I've seen yet. But, I mean, this guy is like $27, and the fit and finish and everything else on that is just above and beyond what we get here. So that's a little unfortunate. We do have a little bump there, so that raises up the overall width, but it's obviously not that thick all the way around, just there in the middle. So like I said, the ergos on that, it does help get it a little bit out there. And at least this wire clip doesn't seem to bother me that much, getting it kind of on the pinky or whatnot, probably because it doesn't stick up an enormous amount there. So that's pretty fantastic to see. So yeah, it's pretty comfortable. So I guess I can do some size comparisons and some measurements and stuff like that for the people who are super into that sort of stuff. Obviously the Endura there is going to be a little bit larger. It's basically the same length kind of things as the Benchmade 940 here. Obviously it's taller. So with that being said, yeah, the rat number one is going to be a little bit larger as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the PM2, which the blade to handle is about the same here, but the PM2 does have a little bit more kind of going on there in the back end with the lanyard tube and whatnot. So there is some comparisons. And yeah, let's go ahead and, well, since we're here on millimeters, I'll go ahead and look at the blade stack thickness. And this is 3.5, which, hey, that's kind of nice. I do like them being a little slicier for an EDC sort of thing. And that's obviously what this knife is going for. All right, like I said, yeah, with that little bump there, we end up getting it to right around 6.1 or so of an inch, 0.61. But it is, a bit less before then, just a little tiny bit thicker than the PM2. So that is kind of nice. Let's go ahead and look at the blade length. They claim it's a lot longer than I kind of feel that it is, but that's because of the way that I end up measuring. I will end up measuring from the top part of a handle, and for me, I get 3.4 inches there. I think they claim that it's like 3.65, and I can kind of see that if they're going from way back here at the plunge grind, probably before the blade starts or something like that. But in practice, if you're trying to use something, slicing like that, you can probably make use of that. But if you are poking it into something, cardboard box, person, I don't really care what it might or might not be, it's going to be really difficult to get past that point. So that's generally how I end up measuring how long a knife blade actually is, in case y'all were curious about that. And let's see, we got this as well. Let's go down to ounces. 4.14 ounces, or a little over 117 grams. So not an incredible lightweight, and that probably has to do with the liners in general, because micarta is not an incredibly weighty material on its own. So I am going to take this apart, and this is where something was a little interesting to me. Was I found some rust on the inside of this guy, on the liner, not the blade, but the liner. But it was specifically hidden under the G10 backspacer there. Everything that was exposed otherwise was perfectly fine. So, unless you actually did take the thing completely apart, you wouldn't have seen that. But this guy does take T6 and T8, as well as this bolt thing at the back that doesn't have a screw type of thing to it. So because I don't really have a bit driver around that size that's easily accessible to me down here, I'm just going to use a pair of pliers for it. It is important to say that this does have a ceramic ball for glass breaking, kind of built in the back there. Not my favorite, because then you have to walk around eggshells if this is anywhere near a phone, because it will absolutely decimate a screen super quick. So another thing to keep in mind there. All right, so yeah, these guys have a couple of barrel spacers in here. The screws are in on both sides. And I will go ahead and take that out. I had a heck of a time actually getting these screws to thread back in properly when it came time for me to put this thing back together. Hopefully that doesn't happen to me again this time around. But yeah, definitely something you should probably keep in mind. All right, and I will go ahead and loosen this guy up a little bit. And there it goes. It's gone forever. Just kidding. I feel it under my foot. Okay, so yeah, once that's gone, you see that little hole down there. That's a steel piece that's basically sandwiched in there and not held in by anything. And that's perfectly fine for a lot of knives. I know the CRKT CEO does the same exact thing, so you know it's not exactly, oh, it's an absolute terrible decision or anything like that. I still don't personally like it. Well, what are you gonna do, huh? All right, this had some pretty crazy Loctite going on here. It doesn't anymore because I've, of course, taken it apart. Liner, nothing really useful to see there, except for it does have the holes there milled on the inside for holding the pocket clip there. All right, and then, yep, we can pull that out. And we can see we do have ceramic bearings, and there's a few more in there than you would see from a lot of other manufacturers, including like TwoSun and stuff like that. And that probably helps a little bit with the action there. They do sit into the blade, as you can see here. And because of that, they don't really have any kind of crazy rider or anything like that going on here, but they do have that little circle kind of carved in on both sides that helps that out. We got the little pivot guy here, a little bit of a D shape there in the end, so that does help. Certainly helped me when I was trying to initially take that pivot screw out. This thing is fiddly AF to try and get back in there when you're putting the knife back together. And we can see we got a little tiny bit of skeletonization on the liner lock side. And the other liner side, we got a whole bunch of holes there. But it was when I lifted this up here, that's when I found rust underneath there. Now I've taken care of it. I essentially took some flits and some quad zero steel wool and kind of worked that around and everything like that. Got that all taken care of. And then, because at that point I didn't really trust these liners, I've done that on some cheap knives. I did it on Gonzos for a while until I realized I didn't really need to. But yeah, I did coat the whole liners in some Tough Glide there, so it'll add some extra, rust protection and all that sort of stuff after the fact. Yeah, we got the stop pin over here. Pretty much the rest of it's quite simple. But it's at least effective, and the action on this thing is pretty good. I just would say the fit and finish is just a little bit lacking for my taste for a knife that basically costs the same amount as like a lot of the Kaiser Vanguard series. I think they're all right around that mid to high 50s range. And I really do think that you get a little bit more for your money from them than you do from others. Like this guy here. Something like the Graziosos were fantastic. But there's also, the Kaiser Begleiter 2 that's the same price as well. Yeah, as you can see, this thing is a fiddly mess trying to get that back together, especially trying to perfectly encapsulate this when you're struggling trying to get it to match up with the other things here. And then actually have it sit correctly in there, which means that this pivot screw needs to be exactly right. Which, hey, that's something that happens on a lot of knives. I do definitely fumble around with that from time to time on TwoSuns. That's why I do prefer a full D shape on both sides. It's just much easier end user experience kind of going on there. Come on, buddy. Okay. Okay. I think I got it. So slip that on there. Don't breathe heavily, and get the pivot on. And that is, where did that go? There we go. Yeah, welcome to the top of the wrist cam as usual. All right, which side did I want that pocket clip on? Well, I will put these screws on first. The hardware doesn't feel super chintzy on this, which is great. But like I did say, I did have a hell of a time getting these things to thread up correctly, so the tolerances on them might be just a little bit less than you might be experiencing with some other knives. Apparently I got butterfingers. Alright, that's the side I want the clip on. So it will latch in there like some vampire fangs. If you're familiar with network cable and how to crimp some of those. I'm not really an IT person, but I certainly have worked with IT and done a lot of other hardware stuff. Alright. Yeah, so that's back in there. We have some blade play, so now I have no blade play. And it's back. It does feel nice and rock solid, so that's nice. And the ergonomics are pretty good on there, so that's also good. I have not sharpened this thing yet, but I do plan on it. I was actually waiting for... might as well point to it. This WorkSharp Elite Sharpener Upgrade Kit come in, so I can play around with that a little bit. So that's what I plan on doing here in just a little bit. So yeah, that's the Ironfly Zesty there. It's kind of an interesting design. The ergonomics are pretty good on it, but the fit and finish really isn't there for a knife that retails for almost $60. And I mean, you know, obviously it is the economies of scale. This is a smaller company. This knife started on Kickstarter and all that sort of stuff. So it's not going to really try to compete super well against something like Gonzo. But you are going to get better fit and finish from a Gonzo at around $30 than you are at this at 60. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way that it goes. Still a pretty interesting knife overall. This comes in two variants. Green and, well, it's probably brown. But yeah, Micarta only. That's the only thing they offer it in. But, like I said, this was a Kickstarter project, which means that if it's definitely here on retail shelves, then it started in 2019, possibly 2020. And that was when the whole Micarta craze was really ramping up. Now, basically, everything under the sun has that as an available option. And for some of them, I do actually appreciate that over just the smooth milled G10 that a lot of companies will do. But yeah, I do really think that a lot of people are probably running into Micarta fatigue, the way that they're running into D2, and heck, even 14C28N as being just in absolutely everything under the sun. But, all right, well, that was a fun little teardown. So. That's basically everything I have to say about this Ironfly Zesty. Unless you are really, really invested in and the company and what kind of things that they'll end up doing in the future, I would say probably pass on it. You know, it's comfortable, but it's just a knife. Nothing super duper crazy or out of the ordinary about it. And you can get kind of a better knife for less money. So those are kind of my thoughts on it. It's not bad, but not great. All right. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. And subscribe.